Lines probably worse.
I'm just spoiled by it. I don't think I'm gonna. Thank you, Jonathan. I'd like to call the February 25th, 2025 School Committee Special Meeting Budget Workshop number 2 to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is located over Michael's shoulder. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm not the only one thinking of Jennifer tonight, and the school's flag has been flying at half staff is the policy and practice when a member of the school district or our community, past or present, passes away. 2 weeks ago, we lost a beloved staff member in a tragic motor vehicle accident. Jennifer Sylvia was a talented, efficient, really the eyes and ears of this group behind closed doors. I never missed anything. Anything I did miss, she brought to my attention, our attention. She was our confidential secretary for the school committee for the past 3 years, but more importantly, she was a fabulous human being. District staff, those closest to her, will surely miss Jen. We are still wrapping our heads around this sudden loss of our colleague and friend. So with that, I hope that you can send your prayers to her family and certainly all those that are mourning her loss, as well as anyone that is in harm's way defending our freedoms. I ask that we have a moment of silence. I thank you all. I do want to note that Mariah will be resuming. You've done this position before, and in the interim period, certainly we'd love to have you as long as you'd like to stay, but in this interim period, you will be filling her shoes. You've done beautifully before, and I have nothing but confidence in you doing this again. So thank you for stepping up under these circumstances. I know that it was certainly has caught all of us off guard, but thank you for your service. That being said, we will get to the budget. And ultimately, the statement that the chair typically makes is, we're ensuring that this budget is financially responsible and protecting the continued outcomes, the students, the families of the Wilbur McMahon School in this district, as well as being fiscally responsible to the stakeholders of the community of Little Compton. And I think that we have done excellent in keeping with that theme, certainly with my time on the committee and certainly with my time spent with Mr. McNamee and Dr. Mitchell. And I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts, their presentation, and approving the budget later tonight, should that be the will of this committee. So without any further ado, who is going to lead us off tonight? Lori is still in the leadoff position. And our three-hitter, Mr. McNamee, waiting in the wings. We're going to load up these bases, and here we go. Go ahead, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you.
During budget season. I did not bug him during vacation.
I will also note that there is public comment, public input. I would like to hear, what can we have just in case anyone in the audience does have questions regarding the budget, I'd rather it come following as such. Same rules will apply. State your name, address. You have 3 minutes to speak. If it is pertaining to the budget, certainly comment on it. But if it is for a meeting in the future, we can certainly log that and address it at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. After the first budget workshop, John and I always sort of, regroup and debrief and start proceeding, polishing, editing with presentation, and this is no different. So a few of the slides look a little bit different, and they will go through an overhaul for our March 18th meeting with the Budget Committee. But we've started that process this week. Thanks, Jonathan. Oh, want me to do it?
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much. Our vision statement and brought it back to its original form that the SIT team created a few years ago, the school improvement team. The state likes us to have our vision statement in sort of prose form rather than this sort of elliptical version, but it's much better this way. So it's easier to read, faster, quicker, and it aligns with our International Baccalaureate framework. I also pulled, our three main highlights. 2 number 1 spots 2 years in a row, ELA and math achievement in 2024, ELA and science achievement in 2023. Our 5-star rating, which is very rare, very difficult to achieve. We're looking at our data this year. We're like, oof, we're crossing our fingers, Principal McKinnon and I. And obviously, getting the International Baccalaureate certified grad school in Rhode Island, offering the middle years program. Yes, some bells and whistles right there. That's a link, and I sometimes find it necessary if I read the room to link to this and just go through some of the IB framework in our school. And then I sort of pulled out this piece that was subsumed within another slide. These extraordinary achievements are due to the town's strong support school department, which affords our students pre-K through grade 8 education supported by excellent teachers and specialists, optimal class sizes, beautiful green spaces, a well-maintained facility, a formal capital improvement plan, our stage 2, and continuous investment in high-quality curriculum materials, as well as state-of-the-art instructional technology. We could not do any of this without the support of our community. And we are grateful for that every day. And then I just give the visuals of where we are in terms of the top districts in the state. We've all been through this. But members of the public are usually at that budget committee meeting. It's usually pretty big. And then our various curriculum offerings, I did update this as we've updated our curriculum. And for a small school, we offer so much in terms of athletics and clubs. And we've added this past year, First Lego League, we've added in the past 2 years, student council, which is quite a big deal. And hopefully by March 18th, we will know about the civics B.
The civics fee, if I could, because I know I talked to Travis about this, just to let our school committee know. Mr. Lee Torres, our humanities instructor, social studies instructor, I had 9 students in the 8th grade who competed for the Rhode Island Civics B. And of those 9 students, 7 of them are in the finals in the state of Rhode Island. There's 20 total in the state of Rhode Island. 7 of them are from Woodburn McMahon School.
Yes.
I said to Dr. Mitchell today that competition, the next competition for the Civics B is June 17th.
Okay.
And in the I believe 7 o'clock at night, and I believe it's in East Greenwich. So those 7 students will be participating in that Civics B for a chance to go to Washington, D.C. in September as high school freshmen to compete. The top winner last year received a $100,000 college scholarship. And Lee seems to think that obviously one of our students has a great shot at being a state representative.
Wow. So
Now,
dozens and I have an email from them listing that some of the winners have been announced, and so many superintendents. Dozens of schools competed, and we have almost half.
7 and 20 from our community is incredible.
Yeah.
Or so, but gosh, 90% of our kids made it.
Yeah, of the.
We're pretty, so I didn't know what the next timeline was.
These were students not necessarily in one particular class.
Right.
You offered it to them, they wanted to try it, similar to the spelling bee.
Extra work.
Extra work, they met during the lunch hours, working on their, I believe it was a paper that they had to write. I believe the next part of this, the civics bee, is actually questions are asked regarding civics and government, at the June 17th competition. It's a little bit different.
Have more information how many schools participated, but look where we are. We're 7 out of 20.
Yeah.
We're set, and we got those results over the course of several days.
Yeah, yes, they did.
They
The
rolled
ones were
in.
sent to parents.
Yeah.
We didn't get the information.
Right.
We were hearing from the kids.
And then the parents were forwarding them to us, etc. And is this the first year that's offered?
First year that.
Did it take the place of the geography bee?
I believe it did.
Yep.
This, I think, was something that had run in the past. It had stopped, and these gentlemen from West Bay picked it up again, stopped it.
Yes. Our students, yeah, I remember last summer showing you a video of all of our outdoor activities, and it just was never ending. It was difficult for me to choose which shots to include in that. And so here you see some of our field trips on and off campus. And so it's not meant to be read, but it's meant to be absorbed, that this little school offers so much enrichment opportunity. Then this goes to John. These are his.
Oh, thank you.
I threw one in there. You'll notice it when you see it, that you will be working with this.
So if we can just discuss a little bit about the process on this budget now. So once the school committee hopefully approves this evening, by ordinance or by town charter, it has to be to the town clerk by March 1st. So our intention is, once it's approved, we send a letter in that gives them the numbers that they need to include. What we'll do at that point in time is send copies of the budget in the detail, probably with my executive summary, to the chairman of the budget board, to the town administrator, and also to the president of the council. The town is now working on their budget. Their budget also has to be in by March 1st. That's when the budget committee will then start their work and kind of go through the meeting with the departments, analyzing the budget. We're scheduled to meet with them on March 18th. But in the meantime, they'll obviously have the information prior to that. And generally, it's, I believe, 30 days before the financial town meeting, which is May 20th, that they need to have the final approval on the budget, and then obviously advertise for the tax rate, and also have the information for the town meeting in the hands of the public. So it'll start to really kind of snowball over the next 4 to 6 weeks now. The town, because I've been up there, I've been kind of involved in the budget that they're putting together. So they're looking at somewhere in the, I think they're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 or 600,000 an increase in the overall expenditures. But there's a lot of numbers that they still need to include in there, and I've worked with them. We refinanced our bond. So I did come up with some additional debt service numbers for them, because we do have housing aid at 40% on that bond. So with the refinance bond, what they need to do is include the debt service in their schedule, so it gets in the tax rate, but they also get housing aid from RIDE. So I've done that calculation, and that's probably going to save them a few, well, I think there was probably 150,000 or so savings when I came up with that number. So it's kind of still a work in process on the town side. But it's got to come together for submission to the budget board, budget committee on March 1st. I think they're actually going to submit it to them on the 3rd, that Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. They did have a placeholder in their budget for the schools at 3%. If you recall, and you can see that on your handouts on page.
One of them.
Yeah, but I think on page 10, we're looking at a 2.62%, and that particular. Okay, so this number on this second column, the amount, that is the town appropriation. So our overall budget is going to be in the neighborhood of 8.8 million, but what we're requesting for the town in terms of funding is 8,261,38, which is an increase over last year, 210, which is at the 2.62%. So they included 3% in their budget based on what we asked for in 25. So they're going to have a little bit of a pickup by reducing the number that they're going to put in their budget to the 8,261,138. And again, that number is all keyed on the state law that we talked about in terms of school committee not being able to present a budget that exceeds more than 4% of the prior year appropriation. So I think, that's in line. We've looked at some other districts around the state. A lot of them are in that 2.5% to 3%. So we seem to be falling right in line with the number of districts. There are some districts that are in some bad financial state, like, maybe our neighbor, but places like, Warwick and Coventry that have issues. So from our standpoint, I think we've been fairly consistent, and I think that this is a pretty good proposal in terms of an increase for the 26 budget. Now, we don't get a lot of state aid. The other big number that a lot of districts will have is their town appropriation. The second largest number is generally the state aid. To put it in perspective, in Lincoln, I get $44 million from the town. I get $22 million from state aid. And here we're getting 8.2 million from the town, and we get 321,000 in state aid. So it's they do a value of the wealth of the community, and they look at some of the numbers, they look at enrollments and things like that. And so we're never going to be in a position where we're going to have a big reliance on state aid. But one of the things that has really helped us over the last few years is certainly the student tuition. So now in this year's budget, we have 40 students at the 6,000, and we have 7 students that are paying the 2,700. So they're the pre-K students that are paying the 2,700. So that is giving us a projected revenue for FY26 of almost 259,000 compared to last year's budget, which was 115,500, but we are projecting to end the year with about 210,000. So that's a sizable increase, and certainly makes up for a lot of the lost state aid that we haven't been getting. So back in 23, we were getting almost 450,000 of state aid. We're down to 321,000 now. So we've more than made up that loss in state aid with the student tuitions coming in. So from a revenue standpoint, I think these numbers appear to be pretty solid. So I'm not concerned about the funding of the expenses as a result of the revenues that are coming in. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the revenue portion of it, but I think it's important to know, again, that you'll see that percentage being bandied about, that, and that you always hear about that 4%. So in the town basically cannot increase the tax levy by more than 4% of the prior year. So that's a state law. And one of the things we were talking about, and I think there's a bill being introduced into the legislature that is looking to, if you have housing projects, of course, they're saying large housing projects, you wouldn't be subject to that 4% cap. So you could exceed 4% of your levy if you are doing some investments in housing projects. We don't know. I mean, the bill it's just been introduced, so we don't know how that's going to wind up and whether there'll be some impact out there or not. I'm not sure. So, but right now that the focus is really on that, on the town side, is that 4% increase on the levy. So this is our total expenditures. So we are looking at an increase of 3.41%. It's a little bit higher, but we do have a placeholder in there for certainly our largest union, the teachers union, which will be going into negotiations. So we do have a placeholder in there to cover that. As I mentioned before, the other areas that we do have some concerns on would be medical. We have a 6% placeholder in on that one. We think that should be fine, but hopefully that will come in a little bit less than that. We were supposed to open the bids for the busing contract on Thursday, but we given the respondents another week because there was some requests for additional information. So I'm hoping that within the next couple of weeks, we'll get the bids in on the transportation and see what that looks like. I do have a 5% increase for transportation. I'm hoping that's going to be enough. So there are some areas on the expenditure side that we just have to kind of closely monitor. A lot of the curriculum that the superintendent had referred to before, we've got those numbers in the budget, and which has been in the past. We've added that high quality curriculum in there. So those numbers seem to be pretty good. Jonathan's got a lot of the technology in there. We do have a federal grant, a REAP grant that we get, that we do supplement some of our technology expenditures with, where we think that number will hopefully survive. If it doesn't, I think we're only talking about maybe 12 or 13,000. So we may have to do some maneuvering on the technology side. Other than that, the Portsmouth High School, which is a big number, that amount is going to be fairly consistent. We talked about the out of district tuition. Healthcare and dental, 6%. There is a little bit of a pickup in the teacher pension, the 15.1%. So anytime you have an increase in teacher salaries, as we will have in this upcoming, you'll have an additional close to 20%, which will cover their ERSRI, which is the defined benefit portion of their pension, plus the TIA-RF, which is the defined contribution portion of their pension, and then of course the Medicaid taxes. So we're looking at around 78 students. I believe we're right now at 78 students. And I think we talked at the last meeting. We've got a big grade 8, but we also have a lot of students that'll be going into the private sector. So And the tuition is going up from 15.5 to 16.5. So it's a little bit of an increase, but we're able to kind of manage that number as well, because we're not seeing a big increase in the total enrollment. Plus we're seeing the increase in the tuition. Special education out of district, all districts are seeing an increase in this as a result of the pandemic. There's just a lot more needs that the students have right now. So those are going to create some additional cost in that area. And we do have a few more students going out to the CTE programs. We have 2 at the Met, which is a little bit pricier. Newport Career and Tech is at 15.5, and we have 3 full-time, 1 part-time. I believe we have 1 at Tiverton now at 15.5 too. I just got that bill today for a CTE program.
Have kids all over.
The busing, we talked about this, I get the 5% estimate in that. So, I'll be able to provide that. The contract obviously will be coming to the school committee for approval. So we've got a consultant that we're sharing with Middletown, Tiverton, Bristol Warren, and Little Compton. So we're hoping to get more than just 1 bid on that. And hopefully they'll sharpen their pencil a bit. I think bus drivers are not as much of an issue as the last time we went out for bid. So I'm not anticipating like costs have gone up. I mean, I think a lot of them might be in the Teamsters Union now. So we'll see some increase in costs there. Curriculum. These are some of the curriculum costs. I think we're in pretty good shape on those in terms of the programs that we do have in place. And these are some of the bigger capital outlays. And I know John went through these the last time we'd met. And the REAP grant is the only question mark as to whether we'll be getting that. Who knows what's going to happen on that funding. That generally is awarded after the government's year end on 9/30. Get that. I'll apply for it probably in the spring.
Yeah, you do that one.
And then we'll get notification for that probably in fall sometime. So the other area, and this again is on the capital reserve program. We talked about this last time. We do have projects that we're looking at for 26, 27, obviously on HVAC. Right now, we've got a rough estimate of 750,000. We are the consultants or the architects and engineers are going to be looking at that. They think they've got a method that they can get it in pretty economically with the unit ventilated. So we're hoping that we can get that in there. On the revenue side, if you look at the FY26 column on page 28 of the handout, we've got housing aid that we're anticipating to come in, which is based on the monies that we spent on the solar project, and also on the basically on the solar project, which is going to be 144,000. What RIDE does is they have a pay-go funding, which they allow you to advance your housing aid. So when you spend the money, rather than waiting after you complete the project and submit it, they're letting you fund a certain portion of it up front. So we were awarded $162,000, so we'll be using that to help fund the HVAC renovations. The 185 in FY25, which was from the solar project that was awarded to us at the financial town meeting, that has come into our checking account as of last week. I'm still hounding them for the 50,000 for the gymatorium, so I'm hoping that'll be coming in before the end of the year. We received the 75,000 of the state portion of the grant on the solar project. So the only outstanding item on that solar project, other than applying for the housing aid, would be the investment tax credit. And that process requires a registration of the project. So probably about a month or so ago, with everything that's happening, I put the registration in with the feds. We also have a project in Lincoln. I also registered that one. They're supposed to review that. Once I get a registration number, I can then file a tax return and get back 30% investment credit. Both projects are still, quote, under review. So I don't know what's happening and these are part of the Inflation Adjustment Act there. So even though that tax act is in place and we've met the qualifications before the current administration has come in, they could be putting kind of a hold on some of that stuff. I don't anticipate that we won't receive it, but I think with everything that's happening in Washington, there's probably maybe a little bit of a slowdown in that area. So that's the only concern I have on that. That number is, based on my calculation, would be about $168,000. Good chunk of change. So with that coming in, we would have enough funds to do the library, some of the library media center and the HVAC improvements in 26, leaving roughly about 40,000 left over. So we're just kind of measuring the when that investment tax credit comes in. I elected a 12/31 year end, so if I get the registration number over the next month, I'll file a tax return for as of 12/31. Since towns never file a tax return, they really don't elect a tax year end. And I wanted to elect a tax year, so as soon as I got the registration number, I could file the return. So I'm hoping that if we get that within the next month, I'll get that tax return filed, and then we should hopefully get that in before the end of the year, maybe too. But this is also a number that the budget board, budget commission looks at as well, to the budget committee. And we do have probably some additional transfers that we'll be making into this. I've been holding off on submitting those transfers to the school committee until we had some audited financial statements. So we're moving along with some outside assistance on the FY24 financial information. We're hoping that we could get that in at least by the financial town meeting, so that we could have a better handle on where the town stands in 24. Not necessarily, I think the school, the numbers are pretty solid, and we've submitted everything that we needed to submit. We've got our rules from UCOA and RIDE, so we're in pretty good shape on the school side. But so that's kind of the two areas that between the operating budget and the capital reserve that will probably get questioned on by the budget committee.
I do have a question. So we're waiting on the audit. All right. We're waiting on this $168,175.
Well, we're waiting on a registration number for that. So once I have that, I can file the tax return. I would,
File that it's just not, it's saying process
it's under review, I guess.
under review, even better.
Yes, under review. Now, they could come back, ask for some more information, which I don't think would be a problem because we've got plenty of information we can send them.
You had stated the last time what the solar project will cost with all of these numbers. Can we just have that number?
21,000. That's our cost at the end of the day.
21?
21.
It was about 560,000.
And that's after all the housing aid, the investment tax credit, the 75,000 from the state, 185 from the town. So our cost out of our capital reserve is 21,000.
A lot of dashboards. Entering all those.
Do you anticipate any, when you talk about the revenue coming in, do you anticipate any special education to offset that revenue significantly? Maybe Dr. Mitchell or even Principal McKinnon or Mark can answer that. I know that we're probably starting to test our incoming kiddos or.
Well, I think, you always have the issue. As you know, that once a child turns 3, we have the responsibility to provide those services to that child. So in terms of students that come in and we deal with this on a pretty larger scale in Lincoln, that we'll have students that may be coming in that would never see the inside of a school because they need to go out of district, need to go to a Meeting Street school or a Trudeau Center or something like that. So, and it depends on certainly where the student resides. It comes in. So, I mean, at this point, the administration does they look at early intervening services and try to identify, that group of individuals. But based on the information we have now, we think that the 179 that we have in there right now in the budget should be adequate. It has been bumped up, but we do think it's adequate. But all it takes is one student going out on an IEP and out of district, and that could, easily be 80 to 100,000.
And my final question, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. Jonathan, do you have a contingency plan should we not get that REAP grant?
No, I mean, we can certainly scrape by. There's a number of upgrades we've been planning for this year that are necessary to maintain our current fleets, our current kind of quality of life and standards when it comes to our technology. We always want to keep our devices on a relatively short refresh cycle to make sure we can retain value out of them. But we can, if need be, stretch the length of time for those things. Most of our stuff is still very new. I would say the oldest device in use right now is probably 2 years old. So we could stretch some of those cycles. We could certainly defer certain types of upgrades a little while if we need to. It's definitely doable. It breaks our momentum a little bit. But I mean, we can work in bench if necessary.
Okay. We'll open it up to the committee then. Michael.
John, you talked about the special education at 179, the ELL program at PHS. Is that part of that special education number, or is
that number is included in the tuition number for Portsmouth High School? So they will charge us based on the services that are provided to any MLL students that we're sending to Portsmouth. So that is included in that tuition number at Portsmouth in the budget.
So our budgeted number is 16.5 per student going there. There's a notation of 17.
That was for an MLL student, right? So those are services that they're getting for those over the period of the year. So that could be 1 or 2 students that would be getting those over, X number of periods, a week or whatever.
I guess my question would be, is that 17 on top of the 16.5?
That 17 is for just those students on top of the 16.5, correct?
Yeah, so we're at 30, that's like 33,005, really.
Well, yeah, but that's, I think, for more than one MLL student. So it's really not kind of the services that are being provided for that student over the period of a year as an estimate. But it is additional cost over the 16.5, yep.
I mean, that isn't the contract, anything above and beyond the regular ed program, they will bill us. And every now and then we have MLL students. We went from 0 here to 2% of our student population.
Under the materials and supplies, you reference a number, an increase of 72,000. And it references increase in enrollment. Is that number, and I say it's based on 47 tuition students. Does that number include the Chromebooks that go to the tuition students, or is that something that's separate?
The Chromebooks would be basically to John's budget. So we'll have those costs that would be in technology.
So that's an additional cost to this. So I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't think we're doing pre-K. I don't think we have Chromebooks going to pre-K. So we have 40 students, but we'll.
33 in K8. Yeah. The rest of pre-K.
Right.
Pre-K actually does have some nice
Some little
tablets.
tablets.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So when I look at this and I say I'm looking at 72,000 for the tuition students. If I take the 72,000, I divide it by the number of students, whether it's the 33 or whether it's the 40, that's the cost that we're incurring.
I know, because you got inflationary costs in there as well too. So.
Right, I mean, it just says that there's an increase of approximately 72,000.
That's the increase. Some of it is attributable, obviously, to the increase in enrollment. But that's not all of the increase, because some of it is just the cost of the materials as well, too, going up.
No, I understand materials cost, the materials going up. I'm just saying is that, are we incurring that cost because of the tuition students that are coming in? I'm trying to see is.
Well, yeah, because those students coming in are going to need additional, whether it's science kits that we're going to bring out to those students, or any kind of educational supplies that we're buying, we're going to buy more because we have more students. Yeah.
I thought I did a rough number of 72,000 divided by 40, came out to about 1,800 in supplies. Does that seem right? Is that what we'd be looking at for that?
No, not per student.
You'd have to find out what the percentage increase of the fixed cost items that have increased due to inflation. And then you'd also have to take into account the number of students, remove the operating cost increase that you spoke of. I mean, it's a pretty, I don't want to say it's overly detailed, but it has several line items, I'm imagining, that contribute to that $78,000. It's not just
Right.
40 students, here's the new number. I mean, you'd have to go through.
Yeah, so there, a portion of that certainly is the result of an increase in the students. There's no question about it. And a portion of it is going to be just a general increase in the overall cost of the supply.
So I guess because eventually we're going to be having this discussion about what tuition rates are, and you make the notation here, so it's like, okay.
What I can do is I can go through and I can just look at the enrollment and look at the average educational supplies per student and come up with that number, which would be a better comparison in terms of what it's going to cost us. There is an incremental cost, obviously, for adding a student. There's no question about it.
Supply, I mean, there's supplies, I mean, there's supplies and materials, I understood, for a student, I mean, to be expected. What is that number? And this kind of pops out at me, and then I look at it and I say, okay, well, what's that number? And then what's the number for the Chromebook portion of it on top of that, and
And then are you asking yourself, does it exceed the $6,000 that we're charging them?
I don't know, I wouldn't exceed the 6,000.
because we got teachers' salaries on top of that. You gotta, there's time that goes to that, and if there's,
But see, there's no,
Like the teachers.
there's no increase in the number.
Yeah, we're not changing the number.
no, I know, but that teachers spreading their time to the other students too. So I mean, that has value, right? I've said that for a while, that there's always value, right? In that, and what that teacher's spending their time on, whether it's 10 students or whether it's 15 students, there's value in.
But there's no additional cost, whether it's 10 or 15. So supplies is different. There is an additional cost.
Yeah,
But
so
not in the teacher's salary.
to me, the number is $6,000 that we're charging does not, when you start looking at what our overhead is for that, it's not all profit. And I know it's been said that it's been all profit here in previous meetings prior to the existing committee that's here, and that's not true. And that's why I want to make sure what is that number, and I want to know what that number was.
Remove the 40 students. What's that number? 259,000.
You really can look at
What I'm saying, but if you remove those students, and then you still have the cost of inflation, I mean, it's a huge offset that we're filling a bus or a train that leaves the station every day that has empty seats on it. We're still going to have those fixed costs. We still got to pay for the conductors, i.e. the teachers. And then we're bringing people in at a discounted rate to ensure that those seats are filled, and they offset some of the fixed costs that are going to increase regardless of what the situation is. I'm not disagreeing with you. We should look at like what an increase looks like. I get that. But I don't think that I think the $6,000 that we bring in, I don't think any student is costing us more than that. And if I am wrong, then John will show us that data, and I will absolutely admit that I am. But it's like you got 20 seats in a classroom. If you got 10 kids today and you got 15 tomorrow, I get your time piece. But our teachers are prepared to teach up to 22 students per classroom, as is what is throughout the state. Moreover, our outcomes haven't been negatively impacted. So while I hear your concern in a time spread, I get that. We have not come into this room and said, wow, we're bringing on students, our outcomes are dropping, our instances of bullying are going through the roof. We need to take a step back and really take a look at what this looks like for Little Compton.
And
I'm just saying, I'm with you. I think we should get some sort of itemized expenditure. That's great.
The tuition
I'm sorry,
should be had.
I didn't hear that.
Tuition, the discussion about the tuition should be had in terms of what that number maybe should be, or maybe it needs to increase.
Well, we're looking at numbers, and and I understand you're figuring that revenue into your formula when you're doing your presentation. But then I look at it and I say to myself, well, that's not all gravy coming in, the money that's coming in, because there's overhead to that. And listen, and I understand that there's cost to running the building, there's fixed costs for the plant itself, the actual building, and I get that. But that aside, it costs us more than $6,000 for all the other students that are not tuition students. So that's my
an enrollment piece. That's just, if we had 300 kids in here, the cost of every student would drop precipitously from the number that is printed in our budget. It's a matter of bodies.
Yeah, but like even say like we're paying $16,000 for our kids to go to Portsmouth,
which is pretty much a deal.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is I'm using that as an example. I'm being told that our tuition students are not costing us 6,000, but we're paying 16,500 to go over there. You know, that's my comparison is what I'm trying to show to you.
We have the responsibility as the district to provide that education for our students, whereas people that are coming out of district, they're choosing Little Compton.
I'm just using the money example. I'm not saying that it's not our responsibility. Of course, it's our responsibility to make sure that every student has an education. I 100% agree to that. What I'm trying to show as an example is that we're paying 16,500. So.
Well,
Yeah, I think your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Like, I think it just lends itself to like, we need to have a conversation about tuition.
Correct.
And, you know, what that should look like.
Correct. Agreed. We're all in agreement on that. And John will provide a more detailed outcome. But I mean, we're Michael, unlike the district's responsibility when we're spending 16,500 a kid, families are literally taking their money. Their district isn't saying, oh, you want to go to Little Compton? Here's $6,000. There's families are making the decision to say, this district that I live in is not meeting my child's needs and or the private school I send them to, and I'm going to go to Little Compton. And when we first started this program when Pat McHugh was the chair, they started at 15, I believe. And we heard crickets until 6. When you and I first started on this committee, it was 6 kids, Pat, and now we're up to 40. So clearly something in our sauce is working, and neighboring districts are starting to take notice.
And that's not to say you shouldn't look at the tuition.
No, we were all in agreement on that.
Can we submit specific line items or materials or costs that we'd like to have analyzed prior to that discussion, or is that discussion happening tonight?
No, I mean, in terms of like so yes, prior to when we put on the agenda that we're going to discuss tuition, everyone on this committee can absolutely submit to the administration and John, hey, here's some line items I'm concerned about, or I'd like looked into further. And what it looks like, however your concern is.
For example, we don't provide a transportation to incoming students. So do you take the transportation line out of there?
Mhm.
You still need transportation for the other students. You know, if you look at what happens in other districts where, for example, if a child, so we send a child out to Tiverton for the CTE program, we're paying 15,500. You're generally not sending them out in that K-8. They're not being sent out. It's at the high school level. So RIDE has a formula where they calculate what you would be paying to that district if you're going to send a child to that district, and then the money follows that child. So in Lincoln, I have probably 14 or 15 CTE programs coming in from maybe 5 or 6 different districts. They're going to be paying different amounts based on the RIDE calculation, which is based on what they get in their formula, plus what the state contribution is to them too. So, and certainly it's much higher than the 6,000 we're paying. I mean, that number was derived based on kind of finding where the market was. So it's a combination of things. It's not only cost, but it's kind of where the market is going to be. And so if you say, well, you know, let's go to 75 or 8, and then half of the students go away, then you can go through that computation. But we can find out, for example, on materials and supplies, which would be a number that would be based on enrollment. We can figure out what the per pupil amount would be for that. So when you're adding a student, you can say these are the incremental costs that we're going to be bearing.
Mhm.
I mean, we're not going to hire another principal. We're not going to be hiring teachers. We already said that when we had this, if it was going to add some additional costs, we wouldn't be taking those students on if it had to be additional labor costs, which are really, when you look at the budget, I mean, that's the most expensive part between labor and fringe benefits. Any of the special ed costs are going to be are not really a factor in it. And they would be billed separately, I think, if we had any of those services that needed to be provided. And in some cases, I think the sending district would also have some responsibility for those services. You know?
If I may,
No, please.
John can speak of, the economics of this tuition program. But there is a corollary between a rise in our out of district tuition students and a rise in student achievement these past 3-4 years. And we don't set that tuition rate. That's something that the school committee did and predates all of us. So I really understand where you're going. Because we have to make the same considerations when we're floating an RFP for a high school program. And we do a lot of the same calculations and et cetera, et cetera. But there are some elements to having kids from neighboring communities come here to learn and grow with our kids that can't be quantified. And it just expands our kids' circle of influence and experience. And there's a symbiosis that is wonderful. I have some great nieces and nephews in this school, and they're going to birthday parties in different communities. And it's just some of their best friends or kids, etc. And I see that as an educator. When I first was hired as a superintendent, I was definitely skeptical. I'd never heard of school choice, of course, in Massachusetts. And some communities do flip that switch. I think Westport just flipped it last year or the year before. But it certainly wasn't a thing here in Rhode Island. So I was a little bit skeptical. And then I was an absolute believer. And I've seen it grow over the course of 7 years with no pain points whatsoever borne by the school district with these children, financial or otherwise. And so I can see after 6 years at the same rate, I would hope that you would, tier it. People have 2 or 3 children. That would be my suggestion. It's not on the agenda, so we can't go there. Correct. Do you have my?
But these are good, to echo Amy's, Michael, your points are very well taken, and it's something that I am continually thinking about. And moreover, I think we're all probably thinking about it, because if people from other districts, I'm coaching on weekends, I'm coaching all along the South Coast. I knew that Tiverton School was going to close before probably most of those parents did, because they were approaching me saying, I'm hearing this is going to happen next. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So it's out there. I think that we're going to all have robust dialogue with folks, not only in this community, stakeholders from other communities that currently attend Wilbur McMahon, and then also those that are kind of looking because they're like, my district might be not fulfilling the outcomes and the needs my child and family are looking for. So I hope that we can continue to have those interactions before we have this robust conversation that certainly needs to be had. And it's not just out of district. I've got a bunch of things, like Sean's ears are probably burning right now thinking, but I will save them for that time. And I'll certainly discuss them with this group. But there's ways we can be creative to help those that serve this community, that don't live in this community, those that live in this community that are paying for pre-K. Those are things we should look at, all of those things. So Michael, your point is very well taken. And we need to, as I stated at the beginning of this, not just be fiscally responsible to the outcomes of our students, but also to our community and the stakeholders that, as Lori stated in her presentation, have been so supportive of this school and really provided that support that has created such a robust run that we've had here following COVID. So certainly if there's any others, Sue, Amy, or Mark, do you have questions for Mr. McNamee?
Just got one follow-up. I think I'm done.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. Well, then first, Michael, will you please?
John, you just speak of salaries and an increase of 285. Is that because of contracts, or is there because of additional staff being added? What's that increase?
There's no additional
FTE.
FTEs.
So this was because of contracts for existing, or is this because of part-time?
This is existing contracts plus a placeholder for the teacher's contract that we're going to negotiate.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't know if that was because we were trying to add more staff to that. That's what that number was for. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Michael. And certainly that any increase that occurs within that contract negotiation will come before this committee and we will vote on it. We'll be able to have a robust dialogue as to what it looks like in the tiered, I want to say typically 3-year terms. 3-year term.
Yeah, there's a fiscal impact statement there.
Correct. Sue, Amy, or Mark? Do we have any comments from the public?
I have a question.
Oh, please.
Do you get money from the federal government?
We do get grants. We get Title I, Title II. We get some IDA Part B and IDA preschool. So those grants are administered by the Department of Education now. They've been obviously legislatively approved. So RIDE is still looking at, that whole issue and whether those things will continue. I very much doubt that they would not continue. But
And what's the total of all that for this year and the year?
that's probably in the neighborhood of
Let's see.
$250,000.
It's exactly $205,358 that we get from the Consolidated Resource Program, and that is all the federal grants, IDEA Part A, B, Title I, Title II, and Title IV. And that's from my office. Those grants. Do have it right here. Because last week we had an emergency meeting with RIDE, and we had to send them all of our federal grant totals. And so I sent them the $550,000 PFAS grant, $205,358 for the Consolidated Resource Program. And I did forget the $75,000. I didn't forget it, but it's fully executed at this point, and that is get the phone out.
Right.
Yeah, I think we spent it down. So that one's protected, but so we have about $755,000 hanging in the ether somewhere in DC.
And then Ellen, real quick, if you could just state your name and address for the record for Mariah.
My name is Ellen Name. I live at 19 Bernard Lane. AINN.
Any questions? No? And Mark or Principal McKinnon, anything to add?
Most of those federal grants are for staff, guidance, psychologist, clinician, and custodian.
Those grants fund those positions.
Yes, they do. And our Title I, our math interventionist as well.
Like 80% of those positions.
It depends. Some it's 20. I just spread it all over the place.
I see.
We rely on them.
Dragon for another day. That being said, and there being no more questions from the public and or this committee, I will consider a motion to vote and approve the fiscal year 25-26 school budget.
So moved. Second.
And Mariah, we will vote via roll call. I will vote last.
Susan Chase. Amy Glacier,
Yes.
Mark Glacier,
Yes.
Mike Ruchek,
Aye.
Travis Audi.
Aye. Excellent. Motion passes 5-0. John, Dr. Mitchell. Principal McKinnon, Mark, Jonathan. Thank you all for your diligent input in this. I know, John, you are wearing many hats right now at the town of Little Compton.
I have to relocate my office.
You must be walking some miles.
I'm gonna text you.
Pull into that vortex.
But seriously, thank you. So this was the conclusion of our budget committee. We will vote to adjourn, but the budget meeting will be on Tuesday, March the 18th, and that will be at the town council chambers before the budget committee.
No, I think the budget board committee wanted to have it at the school.
Oh, an away game for them.
Yes.
Well, we
I
can
think it's
accommodate
going to
that.
be their meeting, so I think they'll advertise it.
Okay.
Even if we have a quorum here, we're probably not going to take any votes, so we're just.
No, and we don't have to be present. You both are doing your presentation.
But you're welcome to come visit.
Yes,
the meeting, but
Jazz it up.
I know, yeah. Thank you all. I will consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Mariah, thank you so much for stepping in.